Yeah, love animals, love dogs. Gift from God for sure.
Yeah, I like dogs too. They are good companions.
They're great
Um,
companions.
but
Better than
yeah,
people most of the time.
yeah, that's an unpopular opinion, but true.
Oh, it is. I don't care.
Well,
It is what
thank you
it
for
is.
doing this. I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking the time out of the day. I know we talked about it for a little bit, so yeah,
Mhm.
I'm glad we made it happen.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so you have a really interesting story, and I want to get into that. I know have been in ministry for a long time. I want to talk about that. Um, but obviously, what makes your story really unique is this near-death experience that you had. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? What was your life like? Your faith story, um, that kind
Sure.
of thing.
Yeah. So, um, I wasn't raised in church like, church guy, wasn't raised in church like that. My parents both believed in God, but based on their own life, had lots of struggles and issues, and on the hand that they were dealt. So our family was pretty dysfunctional, messed up. Drugs, alcohol, physical abuse, verbal abuse. I was repeatedly sexually abused as a child by some babysitters. Uh, so it was messed up, like a lot of other people. Um, I was told about God at a young age, and I actually did have a God experience as a child, which basically set the tone for me believing in Jesus for the rest of my life. But made lots of bad choices, lots of bad decisions. Sometimes still do. Was just dealing with the the baggage that I grew up with, and I can look back and see that God was always there, and He was always reaching out to me, like He is for everybody. Sometimes I responded, sometimes I didn't. Um, but He was always definitely always there. Leading up to uh, the accident actually happened in 2006. In 2005, God got me completely sober for the first time ever, and then we owned our own business. My wife and I owned our own business here in central Wisconsin, and that's like piece repair. We used to belong to a large church here in our town. My wife worked there. She was very active. We were doing small groups at our home and stuff. And so that's kind of what was leading up to the accident going into that year, going to the year 2006 when it happened. We were having, like I say, Bible studies and small groups here, and we were actively involved with a lot of stuff. My wife was working there. So God was continuing to draw us closer and closer and closer, literally like leading up right up to the accident.
So it was kind of different for you in the sense it seems like you already had this, um, a growing faith prior to the accident. Not like it was a
Oh, yeah.
dramatic change after, but well, not that there wasn't a change, but you know what I mean. You were kind of on that path.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
um, if you want me asking, like, what denomination were you sort of affiliated with?
So my mom was a Catholic and my dad was a Lutheran. They got married and became Creasters. So we only went to church on Christmas or Easter ever. That's the only, the whole joke about Creaster, Christmas, Easter. So that's the only time we ever went to church, really. So um, my time would have been spent, if I did have any church interaction I had growing up was through Lutheran church. In fact, I actually, as a middle school, was sent to a Lutheran middle school for some years in grade school, which I did learn about Bible stories and stuff at that time. So
So, um, yeah, you've taken us up to the point where you're prior to the accident
yeah,
that occurred. Can you tell us about the day of the accident? What happened? What you remember?
sure. So it was November 16th. It was already cold. We already had snow on the ground. I did on-site diesel repairs. I was saying I had a truck with all my tools on it, basically a big rolling toolbox. And that job that I got hurt on was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was a 3-day job. I was working with another mechanic. It's an hour straight south of our home here, basically, just about an hour. I traveled all around. I didn't have a shop that I worked out of. I just did on-site diesel repair. So I was working those 3 days. I was working at a logging business, um, they had their own implement garage and their own mechanic and everything. But I was called in to do specialized repair work on the engines, typically runnability, overhaul, stuff like that. This one, it was a Peterbilt logging truck, a big Caterpillar engine, and it was leaking coolant. That's what it was called in for. It had a coolant leak. So went there on Tuesday, diagnosed it. We took it apart, me and the other mechanic, the guy that worked at that facility, Leonard, somebody I happen to have known since I was very young. So we worked together. We did that job, taking it apart, clean it up, getting ready. And then the last day we put it back together. And in order to test the repair, we started the engine up and was running, just making sure that it wasn't leaking anymore. And I was just putting my last couple tools away when Leonard tapped me on the shoulder and he asked me if I could look at one more thing. I remember I did not answer. I looked up at the clock and it said 6:10 p.m. That's burned in my memory. I'd left my house at 6 a.m. I got to the job site approximately 7 a.m. We'd worked all day. I'm looking at the clock and I'm thinking, if I leave right now, I've already got over a 13-hour day in. I was used to working 12s all the time, but like I said, even if I walked out right now, it's a 13-hour day. So I didn't really want to stay any longer. And I was thinking that as I was looking at the clock, he could see my wheels turning in my head. He said, I don't want you to have to stay late. He said, just diagnose it. There's another dirty spot. He goes, I think is leaking oil. He said, if you can just diagnose where it's leaking from, maybe it's something simple. You can tell me what to do, the mechanic that worked there, or he says, we'll have to order parts and I'll schedule to come back in later. So if you look underneath one of these big Class 8, what's called Class 8 trucks, the biggest semi trucks, they have this big bumper in the front. The old ones are like chrome or aluminum or whatever, but the new trucks are like black or white plastic. But there's a little bit of space underneath the bottom of the bumper in the ground. If you're to look underneath that space, what you'd see on these trucks, the lowest thing in the ground is typically the front axle. And the reason why is the wheels are out here that turn when you turn your steering wheel. But the axle attaches those wheels and it goes from the left side to the right side. It's a big steel I-beam. And on this truck, it carried between 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight just on the two front tires. So, 5 to 6 tons. Leonard had placed a jack underneath the passenger side of the axle. He had jacked it up, removed the passenger side tire. I looked underneath there. He wanted me to go underneath and look for this oil leak in the front. I looked underneath there. I saw that there was a jack with no jack stands. Typically, you'd want to jack it up and use some type of jack stand or safety equipment. He didn't do that. I had not done that plenty times in my life as well. Kind of a mechanic shortcut, And so I looked under there. I saw it. I saw that it wasn't done the right way. And I was like, it's been on the jack for 3 days. If I'm running 15, 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. So I got on a tool that mechanics use called a creeper. This creeper was his creeper. It wasn't mine. It was plastic. It was hollow. It had little bitty small wheels, and I almost didn't go into the truck on it because it was such a piece of junk. I didn't want to get aggravated by using it. Big difference between cheap tools and expensive tools. That was a cheap tool that, in my opinion, should have been thrown away the day it was brand new. Just not the kind of tool you use to work as a living, as a professional technician. Very aggravating because these little small wheels and doesn't want to roll across the floor good. That's the problem with cheap creepers. So I got on this cheap creeper. I went underneath the truck, and that actually plays a big part of the story. I went underneath the truck. I'm now laying underneath that front axle. It's just above my belly, basically, held up by a jack on one side and the wheel on the other side. Looking up at the bottom of the running engine, I looked at it for a while, figured out what I assumed the leak was from. I yelled out to Leonard and I said, "You can go ahead and shut it off." He got up inside the truck to shut the engine off, and the truck rocked because this truck has big airbag air suspension, so it's just inherent to the way it's built. It rocked above me, which is normal. But when it did, I saw movement in the periphery of my left eye. I turned my head just in time to see the jack that was underneath that front axle had slipped out when he got in, and it rocked, and it was wiggling, rocking. And before I could do anything, the jack shot out and the truck fell through the middle of my body like a blunt guillotine because, again, it's like this wide front to back and this tall, but it's got the 5 or 6 tons of weight on it. So if you could picture 10 to 12,000 pounds of steel dropping, a foot or whatever it was, and hit the cement. It was this crazy loud explosion noise. But to me, besides the explosion noise of steel on cement, I heard the best way I can describe it was like swirling liquid. Um, so when the truck fell on me, it fell through the middle of my body and hit the cement. I wasn't going to stop it. On impact, when it fell through me, it collapsed that plastic creeper, just flattened it right out to the cement. And when it fell on me, blood shot out of my mouth on impact. So if you can picture this 5 to 6 tons of weight dropping through the middle of my belly, when it did, blood shot out. And before I even felt the pain or even looked, just seeing the blood come out of my mouth and that, the trauma, the noise, even the explosional noise, and it falling on me and the blood shooting out right there, I knew, that obviously the truck had fallen on me without looking. And I just called out to Jesus and I said, Lord, help me. I remember I said it twice. I'm not sure why I said it a second time, but I remember saying the second time, Lord, help me. When I say Lord, I'm referring to Jesus, but that's what I said was Lord. And that's when I looked down and I saw the axles on the cement over here with a jacket been holding it up. And it's coming up at an angle, and there was maybe an inch of space right on the left side of my body between the bottom of the axle and the cement. That's with my body and the creeper. And it's like, the creeper's flattened out to nothing because it was hollow plastic. And on the right side of my body, maybe a couple inches of space between the bottom of the axle and the cement, I was thinner than my spine according to the radiology reports. My vertebrae were spider cracked and D-shaped. So that's my L4, L5 vertebrae were right here in the middle. Um, Again, insane, crazy pain. He didn't shut the truck off because the jack slipped out. Before he could shut the truck off, the bumper is on the ground behind my head. I was just in the front of the truck, so the bumper on the passenger side is on the ground. The passenger side fuel tank is on the ground, but the driver's side, because the wheel's still on, is up in the air. So he got down in the truck and he's looking at me underneath the gap of the front bumper over here. Maybe his head is back like this. I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. And sometimes when people see something really bad, they freeze up and go into shock. And that's what he did. He just froze up. And it seemed like forever. He's not doing anything. He's just looking at me with these big eyes. And it was hurting horrendously, obviously. And I'm looking at him, and the engine's still running. It's vibrating on me. And I'm saying, shut it off. Shut it off. Shut it off. It was exaggerating pain. I was begging him to call 911. He wasn't doing anything. It seemed like forever. I'm sure it obviously wasn't forever, but it seemed like it to me in the moment. He finally shook out of it. He shut the engine off. He called 911. And when he called 911, I remember him yelling on the phone, a landline, getting back to 2006. And I remember him yelling on the phone and saying that a truck had fallen on a guy and he was crushed in half, is what he said. And just, I could only see the top half of my body because the axle was so tall. When it fell through me, I could literally just see ribs up and then the gap on each side. So because it's a volunteer fire department in the middle of nowhere, very remote area, he knew they're going to take a long time to get there. So he went and got the jack, and he was trying to figure out how he could get the truck off my body. He couldn't put the jack on it back underneath the axle because the axle's on the ground. So he is trying to figure out a way to do it. Well, as I'm looking over to my left, trapped underneath the truck, like a side view for you, there's a big curved leaf spring that's attached to the axle. It attaches to the frame, and that's the suspension for the truck. So he put if you could picture, he put the jack underneath the arch, the front arch of that leaf spring that's attached to the jack, that's attached to the axle, rather, that's on the ground right now. It's through me, and he started jacking up. But the problem is, you don't want to jack something up that's on an arc or a curve because the jack is just going to slip. So I was saying that to him, don't jack it up there, because I didn't want it to follow me and hurt me first. And I just kept saying, don't jack it up there. And he kept saying, it's the only place I've gotten. There's a little handle. And he just kept pumping it. I was watching the jack slip, but then it caught on a little piece of steel and it started going up. Each little pump of the handle, the truck is now going up off my body. And he got the truck up off me finally, with the jack barely like hanging on the leaf spring over there, in front of the leaf spring. And that's when I looked down, and when I saw my body top to bottom for the first time. Uh, so I had a work uniform with pockets and the name of my Bruce's Mobile Service, whatever, my company. But the uniform went straight back at the bottom of my ribs towards my spine, basically like followed along my spine and then came back up in my pelvic. So when I looked at my body, I saw this ridiculous flat spot across the middle, and there's nothing in real life to compare it to. There isn't. So I guess the word is surreal. The only thing I could think of to compare it to at all was cartoons from when I was a kid. Wile E. Coyote getting run over by Acme truck. I mean, literally, that's the thought that came to my mind because he had a flat spot, right? And that's what I'm looking at myself, that flat spot. And I was thinking it's cartoonish. And the next thought was with the horrible pain, there's no way that you're going to live. There's no way anybody could live with an injury like this as a thought. I'm going to die. And so I was afraid the jack's going to flip. I was afraid he was going to fall on me again. I was in horrible pain. When he took the truck up off my body, an incredible weakness took over. And I found out later from the doctors that was because I had 5 places that the major arteries were completely severed. And as soon as he took the truck up off my body, now I'm bleeding out internally, is why the weakness came. I didn't know it at the time, so I'm panicking. I'm in shock. My heart is racing. I'm afraid, if the jack slip was going to fall on me again. So I reached back and I grabbed the bottom of the bumper just behind my head, and I took everything I had, but I dragged the bumper, just here by my head, and the creeper is broke or flat, crushed flat in the middle, but the wheels are still on. So I was able to drag myself out, uh, you know, so that my shoulders and arms are off from underneath the front bumper, the rest of my body, and I looked underneath, and now the axles will across the top of my lower legs, and I thought, well, if it slips now, it's going to fall and break both my legs. So I put my hands on the bumper, and I was just going to do a push. I was going to try to do a push to just straighten out my arms, and I thought if I could do that push, then my legs would be out far enough that if it fell, it wouldn't hit my legs again. But I couldn't do it, and for whatever reason, I fixated on my right arm, and I was watching my bicep going, just shaking. The arm was just shaking up and down uh, in a blur. It was shaking so fast, which terrified me. And I had a lot of upper body strength at the time from doing heavy equipment work since I was little, since I was young. And I, I could have done a lot of pull-ups healthy, but I couldn't even do this. It was really freaking me out. I was watching my arm shake, and the next thought was, as I was watching my arm shake, the next realization I had was is that I couldn't breathe. When the truck had fallen me, it had collapsed the bottom of both lungs, and I found myself trying to push on the bumper, watching my body shake, and I was gasping for air, trying to get the next breath in, which was terrifying. And it was like I'd get a little bit of a breath, but then I'd try to get the next one. I couldn't. It just was just less and less until I got to a point where I couldn't get the next breath, and I was just going like that. My heart was racing, and the craziest thing is I heard my heart stop. Literally, it was pounding, bup, 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 and it stopped at the last beat. My spirit left my body, literally, like immediately, like the last beat, and my spirit went up into the roof of the garage, 14, 15, 16 feet, whatever that would have been. And I was now looking down from above the accident scene, and the first thing that I could say was an absolute perfect peace. I don't even have words to describe how good it felt. I say it like this all the time that I was having a party in the ceiling by myself because I don't know how else to describe how good it felt. I was just in perfect peace looking down, watching from above. I was so disconnected from the scene, I didn't realize that I was the guy under the truck. I was listening, uh, watching. The guy that I've been working with, Leonard, was on his knees, running his fingers through my hair. He was crying, apologizing. And he's saying stuff like, I should be the one that's dead, not you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because he had jacked up the truck and not used safety equipment. But I didn't feel bad from the ceiling. I didn't feel bad for him or the guy that he was crying over, which turned out to be me, but I didn't know at the time. I'm just watching the whole scene. The volunteer fire department people are showing up onesie twosies as they come. Just watch it. They're all respectfully, quietly talking, listen to everybody's conversation from above. And on each side of my body, what turned out to be my body, on each side of Leonard was an angel. Leonard is like 6'1", 6'2", something like that. And he was on his knees, running his fingers from here. But on each side of him was an angel, based on him, a couple feet taller. So I'm going to say approximately 8 feet tall. Uh, and I've read through the Bible multiple times now. Angels are mentioned almost 300 times in the Bible. And sometimes it talks about their white shining robes. And that's what I saw. These two angels had white shining robes. Um, Sometimes it says they have wings. These angels didn't have wings. They were just big. They're men. Long hair, really long hair. That went all the way down to where their belt was on their robe. Very muscular, big broad shoulders, big arms, narrow waist. They're matching identical, like they could have been, twins. The one from the driver's side reached over and put his hands in the middle flat spot. The one from the passenger side did the same thing. And so looking from above, oddly, I said to myself, those angels are down there to help that guy. That's nice. But it didn't seem like a big deal. It seemed very normal. I've contemplated that so many times. The only thing I can think of is that in the spirit realm, angels are normal. And that's why it didn't seem out of place or out of the ordinary to me when I was in the ceiling. So I'm looking down. I watched the angels touching the guy in the middle. I'm I'm just listening to what, he's still crying. People are respectfully standing around because I had a massive chest injury. They weren't going to do CPR. There's no heartbeat, no pulse. And so they're just standing around talking. Um, they've called med flight, whatever. The last two people that came to the scene of the accident, there were 10 people that came. And the last two people that came was the only woman, the only gray haired guy. And they came in the wrong door. Everybody else came in the front door. These two people came in the back door. And I'm just going to stop right here and say, over a year later, when I got out of the hospital, I got to go to talk to that volunteer fire department just to tell them thank you. And I got to go into their monthly meeting. There was like 30 people in there. And I was able, this is over a year later, I was able to go around that room and I picked out 8 of the people that came to the scene of the accident out of 30. And of that 8, I picked out, it was easy because she was the only woman and he was the only gray haired guy. But I picked those 2 out. But in front of everybody, I said, you guys came in the wrong door. You came in the back door. Everybody else came in the front. Why? I've been thinking about it for a year. Why? And I'd worked at that job site more than once. And I'd always come in off through the front. And that's one of the reasons why it puzzled me. So because it had been over a year, they couldn't remember at first. They thought about it. Then they're like, oh, we missed the first driveway. We saw the flashing lights. There's a blacktop driveway. And the shop's right there, just off the road, not too far. They said they missed it. And then there was a gravel driveway. They said that came up from the back of the shop, secondary next driveway. And that was the reason why they came in the back door. It's a very simple reason, but what it does is it proves that the real Bruce was in the ceiling. And so anyway, I watch from above. She gets down between the angels. She's feeling for a pulse. There was a big guy in bibs on the passenger's front corner and a little guy next to him. And the big guy had his arms crossed. And he points down and he says she's feeling for a pulse. And he says it's too late. He said it a couple times. She ignored him. She kept feeling for a pulse. Um, she said, "What's his name?" She's between the angels. The angels are on each side of her. She had moved Leonard out of the way. Leonard says, "Bruce Van Natta." And this lady starts slapping that guy in the face down there and saying, "Bruce Van Natta, come back, come back." And she kept saying it over and over. And the only way I can describe it, I know it sounds weird to people, but the only way I can describe it is it sounded familiar. I wouldn't have said that was my name or that I knew that was me or anything, but it just sounds familiar. I know it sounds weird, but so my spirit started creeping down, and it seemed like when I got about half the way, it went really fast. My spirit came back into my body. It seemed like through the top. My heart starts, hadn't been going. My heart starts, so obviously I pulse back. My eyes pop open, and I go from feeling the best I've ever felt in my entire life to not feeling the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. And when I came back into my body, my heart started, and I realized I went, oh, 4-letter word, swear word that means fertilizer. And it's like, I'm the guy. It's me. I'm the guy underneath the truck. And then this horrible pain. And I remember the truck. Then it's like, it all came back to me with the truck fell on me. And I remember the truck. Then I'm on the truck. It's like, oh, yeah, the truck fell on me. I'm the one. And the pain was so horrendous. And I just didn't want it. I was like, no, I don't want this. I don't want it. It just hurts too bad. And I remember saying, literally making that mental statement, I do not want this. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went right back up the roof of the garage. Only this time I know when I look down, it's me. I see, my body. I see the angels on each side. But this time when I left my body, something appeared that wasn't there the first time. It was a tunnel going up out of the roof of the garage like at a 45-degree angle, a million miles long. But there was a bright light on the end of the tunnel that I know that I know that I know was heaven. And I got in the tunnel and I started going away towards the light, happy. I was not scared at all. I was happy, excited to go to heaven, happy to go be by Jesus. And I knew he was there waiting for me at the end of the tunnel. I felt like I got about halfway there and I heard this, Bruce Banner, come back, come back. I got sucked backwards out of the tunnel. I, I'm now back in the roof of the garage. I could see the tunnel. I could see the lady. I could see my body. I could see the angels. I'm looking back and forth like that. And then my spirit started going back down in. My spirit came into my body the second time now. So again, the horrible pain comes back. And I looked on my left and my right with my earth eyes, and I couldn't see the angels, which terrified me. because it hurt so bad. And I was thinking, why did God take the angels away when I really need them bad right now? And it was in that chaos, confusion. So if you could picture no heartbeat, no pulse until this lady starts doing what she's doing, people are respectfully standing around, not doing much, just standing around talking, being quiet. But when my spirit came back in my body, my heart starts, they all freaked out and they're kind of, uh, I don't know, running around now. Kind of chaos takes over. And I looked on my left and my right. Like I said, I couldn't see angels. It scared me. I closed my eyes. The pain was horrible. And that's when I heard God speak to me. I didn't see anything, but I heard it. And the first thing that struck me was he was completely calm. Everybody else was frantic, but this voice was very, very calm. And all he said was this: if you want to live, you're going to have to fight, and it's going to be a hard fight. That's it. That's all he said. And I thought about it like 2.2 seconds, and I said, screw it. I don't want to live because I don't want to fight. And it hurts too bad. I don't want it. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went up the roof of the couch the third time. The tunnel was there. I got in the tunnel, happy to go meet Jesus. And again, I felt like I was about halfway there. And then I heard this: Bruce Van Natta, come back, come back. I got stuck backwards out of the tunnel. I'm looking down. I could see the angels again that I couldn't see. Even though I just looked with my earth eyes, I couldn't see them. Now I'm back in spirit. I could see them again. My spirit came back into my body. My heart starts the third and final time. And I look at this lady, the red-haired lady that had come in the back door and gotten down. And I'm looking at her face, and she says to me, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. What do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife? Do you have kids? And when she said that, right there in the spot, not later, but right there, I knew that I knew that I knew God, the Holy Spirit was talking through her, reminding me that I was married, I had kids. Because up until that moment, the trauma, the pain, everything, and everything else was gone in my mind. There was nothing, I didn't even have a fleeting thought about a wife or kids until she said, what do you have to fight for? Are you married? Do you have kids? And then I knew it was God using her to remind me about my wife and kids. And if it was up to me, I would have been gone. That's the peace I've been looking for my whole entire life. And uh, that's what I wanted. And so, unless God used something to remind me to get me to stay, I would have had no intention to stay at all. So she says, what do you have to fight for? Do you have a wife and kids? I thought about Lori. My kids were little at that time, like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, something like that. And she said, don't close your eyes, stay here. And when she said that, it was serious because I knew every time I closed my eyes, I was leaving. And so anyway, they ended up uh, uh, calling an ambulance. It took me to a local hospital. Then I wasn't even out of that hospital. Like 10 minutes, the helicopter came, picked me up there, and took me to our state's biggest trauma center where they operated on me on and off. But that night, the guy who's the head of the trauma center got called in from home to take over the operation from the two night shift guys. My wife got there, and after he'd operated on me quite a while, he came out and told my wife that he said in all his years of being the head of the trauma department, he had never seen a body so badly traumatized and the person make it to the hospital alive. And he said to my wife, your husband must have one hell of a will to fight. He said, but I don't expect him to live through the hour. Um, the injuries are too bad. And then he said, cross your fingers. And my wife told him that she wasn't going to cross her fingers. She was going to pray. And she had gone to the hospital with some people from the church that she worked at. And one of the guys from the church heard the doctor say that that he didn't expect me to live for an hour. So that guy, Deacon Jim, decided to thank God. He said, well, then let's thank God for every 30 minutes of life. So that's what they did all night long, was thank God for every 30 minutes of life. In the morning, the doctor came in from home, shocked to find out I was still alive. And about noon that day, they started doing more operations. They operated on me on and off, kept me in induced coma for weeks. Um, it was a long, 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 ugly process. It added up the days I spent more than a year in the hospital, lots of operations. I had to learn to walk again. I ended up learning to have to read and write again because that was taken. It was. I remember when they brought me out of the coma, but I still had a breathing tube. The very first thing that I wanted to tell everybody was that I had seen angels. In fact, I was trying to talk and I didn't know I couldn't talk because of the tube. And then once I realized I couldn't talk, I motioned for something to write with, and I was just going to write the word angel. And I was so ticked because I couldn't make the A come out of my head and out of my fingers to write. I couldn't do it. and it was so aggravating. I remember throwing the pen or pencil, whatever it was. But when they finally did, they tried to take me out of the off the breathing machine one time, and it failed. My lungs weren't strong enough, which was terrifying. They had to reintubate me. But when they finally were able to take me off the breathing machine, I could talk. The first thing I remember, my brother Luke was there, and my wife was there that day. And I remember I told him and my wife and everybody, I just wanted to talk about the angels that I'd seen. That God had sent angels for me, and it was a big deal then, not like it was when I was in the ceiling. So it was definitely a long, crazy experience. But obviously, if it wouldn't have been for God, what I didn't tell you was that that lady was her name was Shannon. I was 36, she was 38 the day of the accident, but she was a 2-month-old baby Christian. She had been believing in Jesus for 2 months, reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, stay-at-home mom at that point. And she literally showed up to the scene of the accident, and that lady prayed me back to life 3 times. So God sends this woman to pray me back. And it was, again, the pain was so bad I didn't want to come back until God used her to remind me about my wife and kids. So it was a long, ugly recovery process, but here I am, and I just want to share this testimony, tell people God's real. He loves us. He hears our prayers.
It's an amazing story. And I wonder, for you, did you find that people were receptive to your story right away? Did it take time for your family and people close to you to hear it, or were they really
Oh,
on board
some
with?
people were receptive. Anybody that knew anything like the medical part of it, they knew there's no way I was alive. In fact, doctors told us um, in that whole process that you're in the hospital and stuff, the head of this trauma department, he's actually renowned. He's anyway. Uh, he's it's a university hospital. He's no longer here. He's in another hospital. But either way, they told us at the time, based on studies that were done on the mortality rate versus number of arteries severed, they told us at the time that I'm the only person in the whole entire world to have lived after having major arteries severed in 5 places. So we knew it was miraculous. Anybody that had any faith said, well, so they say if you have one major artery severed and you can't put a tourniquet on it, you're going to bleed out in 8 to 10 minutes. It was over 2.5 hours from the point the truck fell on me until they operated on me because of a bunch of stuff that had happened. So 2.5 hours with 5 places major artery severed. I should have died, they said, about the time that I did die. And when the lady prayed me back to life, from that point to the next however long, God was using those angels to keep me alive. So medically, it's absolutely miraculous. Anybody with medical knowledge looks at it and goes, wow, there is no way to describe this except in something supernatural happened. People that knew me, my last name means trouble in my hometown, from my grandpa to my dad to me and my brothers, and there were literally people that it made the front page of the newspaper, and there were literally people that would say things like, "That's impossible because God wouldn't send an angel for him. I mean, he's this, he's that, he did this, he did that. I don't believe it." And uh, I get it. I'm a skeptic. I've been a skeptic my whole life, so it doesn't bother me. Yeah, a little bit because I take it personal. But as far as somebody being a skeptic, I get it because that's who I am. You know.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at this from I mean, I would consider myself a skeptic as well. But what you're saying, I've had 2 decades of ER experience prior to kind
Oh,
of doing this,
okay.
and yeah, when we have people come in with especially severing an a major artery in the abdomen is
Yeah.
catastrophic, and we're talking
Yeah.
minutes typically. So
Great.
I think a lot of people don't understand how miraculous it is
Yeah.
that you're
Only medically
here at
people
this
really
point.
get it. Medically minded people that know those facts get it, like you. But the average person like me, I mean, I didn't know until they told me what a big deal was. I mean, I didn't know, and it happened to
Yeah.
me, right? So I mean,
Yeah, and that element, I knew a little bit of your story before this. I
uh,
didn't realize what the accident was. So now to me
oh,
it's even more compelling because it's verified, right? You had people that came into the room that you remember seeing. Um, you had no business really being alive with the type of um, dissections that would have been involved. Well, let's talk about, so because I know for you, you said an important thing for you is telling people that God is real, right? That's part of what you share. Um, how did your faith or even your theology, let's say, change after this accident?
Oh man. Well, first off, being able to see the angels, knowing that a lady prayed me back from the dead, just like the 8 other people in the Bible were prayed back from the dead, not counting Jesus. Um, Again, I saw it all. It was me. So I mean, it it you know, I know the thing people a lot of times are looking for me to say is that it made my faith shoot to the moon, and that I believe God can do anything. And there's a part of me that knows that God can do anything, but in the I guess just in the vein of being completely transparent, uh, because of all the bad stuff that happened to me as a child, as I know that God can do anything, but as far as did it make me think that God will always answer prayers the way that I want them, I, I it didn't change me, and I don't think that, um, as far as that goes. But what it really did for me, what it really did was, this is the bottom line. I know that I know that I know that I did not deserve to be prayed back from the dead. I know that I didn't deserve anything for God to send 2 angels, or to send a lady to bring me back to life, or the other miracles that happened in the hospital. I know that I've done nothing to deserve that stuff. So what it really did for me was cement the fact that God is a God of mercy, and his mercies are new every day. And I believe that the whole reason why God allowed me to be brought back was to make a statement that if he would give me mercy, then anybody is good. That anybody's okay to get mercy, and that there's not somebody that's too bad. Um, he loves us despite us. So really, for me, the biggest theological strengthening point, yeah, God hears prayers, he answers prayers, not always the way we want, not always in the time frame we want, but just the fact that he loves us despite us, that that he is a God of mercy. For me that's been the biggest takeaway, because I know who I am, who I was, and I know I fully didn't deserve it then. I don't deserve it now. And so again, God's a God of mercy and grace.
That's a great answer, and it already answers another question I was going to ask, which is what maybe you feel like you learned about God. But um, instead, let me ask you, um, what do you think? Obviously, you believe, God allowed you to come back, right? You had, your wife, your kids to fight for. Um, do you feel called to any specific purpose since that moment, or was it just kind of a further step in your faith?
Oh no, I believe that he allowed it, and then it created, honestly, a platform for me to be able to share that, just what I said, that God's alive and well. He loves us despite us, and he's a God of mercy and grace. So that's for me, that's what I think my purpose is to do, is to share that with people. Um, I've It's confusing to me, to be honest, because if good thing I'm not God, but if I were God, I wouldn't have picked me. I wouldn't have been the guy to pick as a spokesman. I would have picked somebody else that's probably more healthy mentally, that probably didn't go through as much crap as I have, and maybe have a bad attitude at times and deal with anger and different things like I do. But for whatever reason, he decided that, again, it's his mercy. He's like, picks this knucklehead and goes, look, if I could do this for him, I could do it for anybody. So I guess I don't even know what else to say.
Yeah, I think you said it. I think it's beautiful the way you described it, and I think a question that I always ask is how you deal with um, skeptics of your story.
Sure.
I would imagine for you, it's, because obviously I can just tell, looking at you right now and having this conversation, that there's sincerity here. Like, this is an authentic um, story. It's an authentic experience. Um, do you have you encountered people since you have become more public with this story? Have you
Yeah.
encountered people with similar stories?
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
people have,
Yeah. I've had to do I'm a I'm a skeptic. I mean, that's who I am. It's who I've again, I think it's God's sense of humor that even had it happen to me because he knows I'd be the one not believing this. I would be the one doubting this if it happens to somebody else. He knows that about me. So just even the fact that he did it to me or allowed it to happen to me is literally like a joke because it's like, okay, I'm gonna pick the guy who wouldn't believe in this. I'm gonna have it happen to him. So again, I completely get skeptics because that's who I am. Um, I can tell you that, yeah, we have dealt with plenty of skeptics. And what's interesting to me, I didn't expect this, but uh, it's not the atheists who've been the nastiest or the meanest to me and the most skeptic, but it's actually been fellow Christians, which I guess that's what I
that's
didn't
that's
expect.
the most common story, right? It's
I
it's
didn't
interesting that
expect it. I didn't expect it, and I mean, honestly, I can say this: atheists have been nicer to me than other Christians, for real. And
do you
and
think
again,
do you think it's because your does your story somehow like because I think with a lot of NDEs sometimes the story there's conflict sometimes with their theology or where they're
yeah,
coming from, their
that's what it is.
dogma, you know.
That's what it is. It's theology. It's they've been taught a theology that miracles don't happen anymore. It ceased with the apostles. We don't need it. We got the Bible. Great, we got the Bible. It is the litmus test. It is God's Bible. I get it, but it doesn't mean he quit doing. But there's a theology out there called cessation that you know, all the miracles and God talking all ceased with the apostles. So then if you come up with a story that, oh, somebody prayed me back to life. Well, if God doesn't do it, well, then they say, well, then the devil must have done it. I'm like, so you're Christian and you believe that the devil brought me back to life as a false sign because the lady prayed in the name of Jesus? It makes no sense, but that's the kind of stuff I deal with. And it's like, it's irritating, it's aggravating. I'd rather deal with an atheist. I'd rather deal with somebody of another faith than another Christian with a cessationist attitude because it's really to me, it's a spirit of the Pharisee. It's the Pharisee spirits because they were the ones that attacked Jesus, tried to say that his miracles didn't happen, all this stuff. So again, yeah, it's something I didn't expect. Sometimes it's hard not to take it personally, but, again, I get it when people are skeptics because 'cause I'm a skeptic, so, just in general, I understand the skeptic thinking because that's how I think, so, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's always a hard, I mean, I want to move on from this topic, but it's hard to imagine that someone would have faith, you know, be a person of faith, hear stories like this that I mean, there are scientists working right now on the research of near-death experiences and
Right,
quantifiable and veridical cases, right?
that's right.
It should encourage your faith. So it's so wild to me that people are so
I know.
unreceptive.
I
Um,
don't get it either.
yeah, it's disappointing. But
It is.
let's talk about your ministry now, because I want to know what kind of so it's Sweetbread Ministries, is that right?
Mhm. Yep, Super
And
Ministries.
what inspired you to start that ministry? What are you doing through that ministry?
We started that ministry while I was still in the hospital. It started officially January 1st, 2008. Um, I had been called to ministry as a young man. Um, all God called my name in a church. I made just as a short little Cliff's Note version. I dated a Catholic girl for a long time. I made a deal with the Catholic girl on a Saturday night. I got my end of the deal. Her end of the bargain was Sunday morning. I would go to mass with her. I went to mass with her Sunday morning, and before we even got to that church, I could feel the presence of God so strong. I didn't want to go in the church. God called my name in the church that day so loud that I thought everybody heard it. So loud that I thought the place was going to collapse and kill us all. I ran. I literally got up and ran out of the church. But before I did, God downloaded a bunch of. He just said my name, but it came with so much, and it was Bruce. I love you, Bruce. You're going the wrong direction. All these things, and it was Bruce. I've called you to ministry, and I literally ran away like Jonah. I literally got up and ran away. So now fast forward a long time, and the accident happens, and I'm finally obedient to go into ministry, honestly, reluctantly. And I'm going to quantify this by saying going to ministry for me means sharing my testimony about what God has done for me. I'm no theologian. I'm no pastor. I'm my ministry is just I'm just a regular guy telling people about what God did for me. That's it. So I don't like you before asked me, do I have a title that I want to use? Just Bruce, just normal if you want to use the title, everyday guy. I mean, really that's it, because God loves everybody, just everyday guys like me too. So that's what even I hesitate to even use the word ministry, but that's what we do is we go around and share this testimony. It's God's testimony that he saved me despite me, you know, and he loves us, and he hears prayers and he answers prayers. Not always the way we want, I wish, but not always the way we want, but he hears prayer and he does answer.
Well, let me ask you, if because you've covered this already quite a bit, but one thing I'd like to ask when somebody's had an experience like this is you're willing to share your story because it's profound, it's encouraging, right? It's a blessing for other people to be able to hear your story.
Yeah.
What message, if there was one thing that you want people to take away from hearing your story when you share it, whether it's, a platform like this or through your ministry, what is one thing you hope people take away from your personal experience?
That there's a spiritual reality of this world, and when we die, we're going somewhere, and we better figure out before we die where we're going, and that God is God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God Jesus is alive and well, and he's a God of mercy and grace, and he loves us despite us. He died for our sins. He wants to have a relationship with us, and but he gives us free will. Just like when I proof of the free will is three times in and out, because I said I didn't want it, my heart stopped. He's like, okay, and then each time when I said I don't want it, okay, he was allowing me to make that choice in and out at that point for whatever reason. So he is a God of free will. He's not going to twist anybody's arm. He loves us. He wants us to respond to that love, but he's not going to force us. So I just want people to think about that spiritual reality.
Well, again, I mean, I really, it we truly appreciate you being willing to do this and share your story. I know that it is impactful for a lot of people. I know you're passionate about it because I can just tell in this conversation I'm having with you. Um, where can people learn about your work, reach out to you, engage with you further?
Sure. We have websites, sweetbreadministries.com or .org, either one. Um, there's a schedule on there. We usually put the meetings a couple weeks out in advance where we're going to be. We don't put them out, months or anything like this. A couple weeks in advance, whatever the next couple ones are going to be. Uh, I speak at schools, jails, churches, wherever God opens the door. Literally, I mean, there's lots of places that you would never even think that we've held services at. So garages, I mean, you name it. We've done services all over. And it's not even really, I don't even know if service is the right word, but just gatherings where we get together and tell people this testimony and just share with them God loves them. So
Um, all right, I'm going to ask you one more question here. Uh,
sure, sure,
if somebody um, is listening to this, I find there's two types of people primarily that listen to our show, and the first group are people who just are fascinated by near-death experiences and are open to kind of conversations about that, consciousness, and that
yeah,
kind of thing. And another group, which is why we try to have conversations like this, are people who um, have or are part of some type of deconstruction movement or have like had a reframing of their faith in some way. Um, for people who are in a position right now, let's say they're listening, they're watching, and they have doubts about God,
yeah.
what would you say based on your life to those people right now where they're at?
For people that have doubts about God, well, first off, I think that God is bigger than our doubts. So for me, skeptic, because I had that experience as a 5-year-old. And when I had that experience, literally what I said was, in true skeptic nature, literally, this is what I said: Jesus, if you're real, because somebody told me the story about Jesus. And laying on top of this bed as a little kid, I said, Jesus, if you're real, prove it and give me a hug. Because they told me the story about Jesus hugging kids in the Bible. So even that prayer for me was a skeptic 5-year-old, 5.5-year-old prayer, straight up skeptic. So the skeptic part doesn't bother me. I get it. Bad crap happens in this world that makes us think, well, if there's a real God, why does he allow this bad stuff? That's that's human nature thinking. So I mean, it totally makes sense for people to be skeptics. I mean, I totally get it. Uh, God is bigger than our skepticism, and I just encourage people. You know what? Take it from another skeptic, give God a chance, and say, God, if you're real, prove it. And he does. I've told that to lots of people. I know sometimes Christians get weird and are like, oh no, don't do it like that, whatever. I just know, for me as a skeptic myself, saying, God, and I know so many people have had this. God, I don't know if you're real. You just show me, do something, show me that you're real. And then being open to that. God's bigger than our doubts. He loves us. He wants to reach in. He runs towards us. So I think when people are open enough even to say that, yeah, I'm a skeptic, God, but if you're listening, show me you're real. There's been so many testimonies of people having then those experiences where God does show them one way or another that he is real. So I guess to all the fellow skeptics like myself out there, I get it. If you know what, you can be a skeptic and be closed-minded, or you can be a skeptic and be somewhat open-minded. And I think, if you're somewhat open-minded, you say, God, show me. Oh, he will. So
That's a good answer, Bruce. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so
oh,
much for doing this and
absolutely.
just being available. I love when people can come on and so give your story in a way that is detailed and meaningful. And you're a well-spoken guy, so I really appreciate you sharing it this way.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, hope we can talk again soon.
Excellent. I appreciate it, Justin.